Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm going to respond to something I thought was hilarious. I saw someone write under a video. A guy came through, probably not a regular, and he said, the thing is though, guys who train really heavy just don't look good. That's the truth of it. Like, everyone who trains heavy doesn't have an impressive physique, which to me seems really weird, because if you go back in history, a lot of the number one ranked bodybuilders in the world at that time lifted really, really, really heavy. And I don't mean heavy like I'm lifting, meaning way heavier. And granted, I train mostly for strength sports. I'm not, really a physique guy. It's not my thing. But the thing is that guys who really were competing in bodybuilding, that's oftentimes the case. And I'll get over into how strength athletes are doing these days, because that's changed too. I'll name three names I promise you everyone's heard from different generations. Reg Park, go back 60s or 70s, 60s. Franco Columbu. Okay, Franco Columbu. And you all know who he is if you follow anything lifting related. Ronnie Coleman. Now, granted, Ronnie Coleman's an aberration. And people oftentimes say, we got to watch the Ronnie Coleman fallacy when it comes to lifting, and I'll agree with that. But the point is, we'll throw that in as the weakest argument out of the group. Okay? Yes, pardon the pun there. But what did those guys all have in common? They all benched 500 pounds. They all had at least a 700-pound deadlift. Okay. You see where we're going with this? In fact, Franco Columbu did. Now, granted, a touch and go for the 2 reps. He did a 700-pound for 3-rep deadlift. The guy was a 600-plus pound squatter. He benched like 500 pounds. Is someone going to say that who chases the physique thing that they don't think Franco Columbu looked good? Granted, okay, you could say Ronnie Coleman. That's fine. Reg Park. Saw an old video, black and white footage of the guy doing a 500-pound floor press. All right, it was claimed that he had a 700-pound deadlift. He was one of the original Hercules on TV in the movies. He played Hercules in the movie. Guy was jacked, looked great, but he was strong as hell. Like, so where do people come up with these insane ideas? And if you're going to use the modern bodybuilder, you can't use the modern stuff because it's all drugs today. They use way, way, way more drugs than anyone had in history. So yeah, they get away with some different stuff. Okay? But, even if we factor all that in, all right, whatever. So take modern stuff. Let's take modern stuff. Anyone telling me a lot of the modern strength athletes, powerlifters, things like that, they don't look good? By those classic standards, what are you guys counting as looking good? Because that's a very subjective thing. But I'm going to assume the person's talking from a training perspective. Big shoulders, ripped, lean, jacked. Better go through and look at the physiques of a lot of high-level powerlifters these days who are not in heavy weight classes, right? They're not fat guys. Look at them. You tell me that it's not the case? That they don't have impressive physiques? And then on top of that, it's like, well, if it's purely by training light and all the high rep stuff, well, what about all the West Side guys? They all did tons and tons and tons and tons of ultra high rep stuff. If you think of West Side outside of the bands and chains, what do you guys think of them being known for? 50 and 100 rep sets for their triceps and hamstrings and stuff, right? That's the stuff they did, right? That's kind of, when you think of West Side, you think bands, chains, box squats, speed work, maxing every week, and just lots of ultra crazy high rep single joint exercises. That's West Side barbell. Okay, that is strength training. These are all world level powerlifters coming out of that gym. But it's just this fascinating idea. Then, even worse, how can you ignore recent internet culture? Even when I came on the scene and was doing the tubes and stuff in 2012, what had just hit and was really big, Martin Burkham with lean gains. This guy had this impressive shredded physique doing short workouts and training just heavy. He was like a minimalist guy talking about, do a heavy set of bench press and then do a drop set and drop down and do, like an all-out 4-rep heavy set. And then when you get right at failure, drop the weight and do another 5 reps, drop the weight, do another 5 reps. Your chest is done. But it was all heavy, right? And Martin was over here repping over 600 pounds on the deadlift. Talking about, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, weighted chin-ups. Maybe do some triceps and calves. Done. I do training 3 days a week, just mostly heavy, focused on, rep strength, on a handful of big exercises, and then maybe 1 or 2 small movements. And then focusing on the diet end. Had people fasting, doing ultra crazy high protein. But it did work, right? He was advocating training heavy, but you see the point where we're going here. It's an insane idea. I personally think if you're trying to get as jacked as possible on the least amount of stuff, meaning that could be obviously natural too. Natural would be the least amount of stuff, but if people were going to use keeping it as minimal as possible, I think you should train multiple rep ranges if you're trying to gain muscle. I think it would behoove you to do some heavy weight, some lighter weight, maybe even some stubborn body parts, some really, really, really high reps. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. But for someone to stand there and say that people who train heavy didn't develop impressive physiques has ignored all of history. Like, that would not even be a thing anyone said without gear coming into the mix. Without high doses of PEDs in the mix, no one would even be having that conversation. Would they? It wouldn't even be happening. Because truly drug-free guys, the biggest ones tend to be the strongest ones. There's an enormous correlation there, guys. The research shows there's an enormous correlation there. So it's a ludicrous statement. What I think would be ludicrous is for anyone to say, you only ever need 1 rep range to get as jacked as possible. No, I think realistically you should train several. I think at the minimum, if you're trying to gain as much muscle as you can, you should do some really heavy work and some pump work. I think you should do a little bit of both. A lot of experts and researchers and PhDs in the exercise science field actually think that that's the case too. They're like, that's probably where the evidence is going to go in the future. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.